What happens when you're not allowed to grieve? My parents expected me to be the strong one after my sister died, to hold them together while they fell apart, to grieve on a schedule that didn't interfere with theirs. The accident happened on a Tuesday afternoon when Sarah was driving home from volleyball practice. Some asshole was weaving through traffic at 90 miles per hour and hit her head on. He died instantly, but Sarah held on for 6 hours while machines kept her breathing, and Mom screamed at doctors to do something. I sat in that hospital waiting room counting the tiles on the ceiling and feeling my insides turn to concrete. When the doctor finally came out with that look on his face, Mom collapsed into Dad's arms, and they both started sobbing so hard the nurses had to sedate her. Nobody noticed I was still sitting there, staring at my hands and trying to remember how to breathe. The next morning, they found a therapist for themselves before Sarah's body was even cold. They booked couples counseling and individual sessions, spending hundreds a week to process their pain. When I asked if I could go too, Dad looked at me like I'd asked for a yacht. We can't afford 3 therapists, he said, then went back to holding Mom while she wailed into his chest. Their grief took up so much space in our house that there wasn't any room left for mine. 3 days after the funeral, they drove me back to college. Mom kept saying things like, Sarah would want you to focus on your studies, and keeping busy will help you heal, while Dad just stared straight ahead. They dropped me off at my dorm and told me to call if I needed anything. But when I tried calling that night because I couldn't stop seeing her face in the hospital bed, Mom answered crying so hard she couldn't talk, and Dad took the phone to say, your mother's having a really hard time right now. We'll call you back. They never did. At school, I walked through days like a ghost. My grades started slipping because I couldn't concentrate on anything except the last text Sarah sent me, something stupid about a TikTok she thought was funny. I failed my first exam and then another, but when my parents called for their weekly check-in, I lied and said everything was fine because Mom always started crying about how she couldn't handle any more bad news. They expected me home every weekend to support the family, which meant sitting silently while they sobbed and told me, we lost a daughter, you just lost a sister. One night when I couldn't sleep, I started scrolling through TikTok trying to distract myself. The algorithm started showing me dark humor videos about grief, kids my age using memes to talk about pain that felt too big for words. For the first time since Sarah died, I didn't feel alone. I watched hundreds of them, crying and laughing because finally, someone understood grief could be absurd and horrible and funny all at once. The night I made my first video, I'd been drinking alone in my dorm room and looking at photos from Sarah's last birthday. I filmed myself holding up her school picture next to her gravestone with text that said, before and after getting my driver's license. Within hours, thousands were commenting, this is exactly how it feels, and dark humor saved my life. Suddenly, I had a community who understood you had to laugh at the horror. I made more videos over the next few weeks, each one a small act of rebellion against the suffocating silence my parents demanded. I posted the selfie I'd taken next to her hospital bed with audio about plot twists nobody asked for. Every video felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for months. The comments became my therapy, strangers on the internet giving me permission to grieve in my own messy way. Then Mom found the videos. She'd been scrolling through TikTok when she saw my face on her For You page. Dad called during class, voice shaking with rage, demanding I come home immediately. When I walked through the door, Mom was under a blanket while Dad paced the living room. How could you do this to us? He kept saying. And when I tried to explain that the videos helped me process everything, he said he could barely look at me. Mom had to be rushed to the emergency room because the videos triggered such a severe panic attack, she couldn't stop vomiting. They drove me back to campus that night in complete silence, dumping my stuff with Dad saying, your tuition's covered this semester, but you'll need to figure out next semester yourself. Alone in my dorm, I felt more isolated than ever. When I snapped during a phone call and told them to move the fuck on, Dad threatened to disown me unless I deleted everything. Even after I apologized and took them down, they stopped calling altogether. That night, drunk and furious, I typed out a Facebook post, knowing it would reach every family friend who thought my parents were handling grief so beautifully. I wrote about how they'd abandoned me while performing Grief for Sympathy, how they had money for their therapy but not mine, how I was failing classes while they told everyone I was doing great. I tagged every relative who'd commented on their posts about their healing journey and hit publish. Within hours, my phone exploded with texts from them, not because they realized I was hurting, but because their friends were asking uncomfortable questions about why their son was posting desperate messages at 2 a.m. Now I'm home taking a gap year in the therapy. They suddenly found money for sitting in family counseling, where we pretend to heal while they worry about what people think. They only started seeing my pain when I made it impossible to ignore in front of their audience.